Ladies and gentlemen, there's no better way to get up in the morning than to get up with Garret. Garret is a third-generation success-credentialed real estate entrepreneur who's here to give you tips, tricks, and share stories of success. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Garret Bedrin.
Good morning, Dougie.
How we doing?
Dougie, do you think I have more ladies or more gentlemen watching?
I don't know. Maybe they could put it in the comments section.
Because
Because we are live.
It is Thursday morning. Gosh, Dougie, was it June 8th, June 9th?
June 9th, I think.
It's been a week.
I think it's
been a week.
Yep.
I've been staying up late with the Warriors every night as I can. I've had some golf, had some great social things, and we're losing track of time. But it's a beautiful day here in Bergen County, New Jersey. And we are live. We're live on Instagram. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So feel free to post any comments, questions, or concerns, as we say, and we can answer them live. Of course, you can always email the show. We have an email address.
We do have an email address.
getupwithgarret@gmail.com. So we can certainly answer those emails right down there. But if you post appropriate comments and questions for us or for our guests, we can absolutely tackle them live. And if you missed any part of the show afterwards later today, you can always go back to the YouTube, LinkedIn, and check it out and add your comments there. So
Absolutely.
Have you been following the NBA, Dougie? Because last night was
I have been.
You have been.
I did watch last game.
Because we are down now.
Yeah.
The Warriors. For those of you that maybe don't know, my first real job after college, had some other different things, of course, little side hustles and things there in the summer, but real kind of post-college career job was with the Golden State Warriors. I was what's called a season ticket account executive, which is fancy for someone who made a lot of cold calls and kind of a entry-level position. And we focused on, obviously, all the fans all over the Bay Area and tried to sell them full season packages, half-season packages, mini plans. And I was out there for 3 years, a great life experience. So the Warriors, I'm not a bandwagon Warrior fan like a lot of other people.
Been there since the beginning.
Been there and got started at the ground level and have some dear friends of mine that are still there, that have been there the whole time. So we root for the Warriors big time. And, the first game, I felt that the Warriors really kind of blew it and handed it to the Celtics because the Warriors, had a tremendous lead. I think they were up maybe 12 or 14 points, 15 points, and they were very close. You kind of had them on the ropes. You got to put your foot down, pedal to the metal there, put your foot on the throat and really just in a heavyweight fight, knock them out. And I thought they let the Celtics back into game one with some kind of, lackadaisical play. Sometimes the Warriors take their foot off the gas because they just, they're so strong and potent offensively. So I was disappointed that one slipped away. Game two, they came out, and really dominated. And right from the get-go, Draymond Green kind of showed that aggressiveness, and the defense was much stronger. And obviously, both games Steph played beautifully, by the way.
So I haven't seen everything. I
Okay.
I missed game one. I did watch last game.
Okay.
But did Draymond do something in game two, or is he talking a lot of smack?
Yeah.
Because the crowd's really getting on Draymond.
Yeah, they hate. Yeah, he absolutely is the agitator and the villain on the road. And he was for the first play of game two. He went and tried to steal the ball from Al Horford and got a jump ball. It was incredible. And there were plays with Jaylen Brown where he kind of they both fell down on the ground, and Draymond kept his legs over him, on purpose for an extra second. And had it been a double technical, then Draymond would have been ejected because he already had a technical foul.
Gotcha.
That is what everyone was talking about.
Gotcha.
But just a lot of aggressiveness from the Warriors in game two to match the Celtics, really strong defense. But after watching game one and two, I kind of felt like the Warriors really were the better team. And they played out of the 8 quarters. The Warriors kind of played really well, 6.5, 7 quarters. But last night, they just kind of started slow. And the Celtics got the rhythm, scored a lot of points, and it was concerning because the Warriors still scored 100 points and didn't win. And Clay finally found his shooting stroke and his touch. He played really well last night.
It was close. It was close until the beginning of the fourth quarter.
So the Warriors had been down most of the game. They were down, and they did get it to a 12-point deficit at half, which is not a lot for the Warriors, which is I really wanted to see it at about 8 points or 9.
Yeah.
And that third quarter was your typical Warriors third quarter. They came out and they cut that lead down.
They actually
took the lead at one point, but by the end of the third, I think they were down, just a couple points. And then in the fourth, Steph's got to rest a little bit, and he got stepped on as well. And hopefully he doesn't have any type of injury. But we'll be hearing more about that the next few days. And, I expected they kind of to split these first 4 games. Now, sometimes it happens a little differently, right? I thought, some people probably thought maybe 2 in California and Boston would get the 2 here. But really, the series starts when somebody wins on the road. And Boston did win on the road. So the Warriors have to get a road victory. And it may come in game 4 tomorrow night, Friday night, or it may come game 6, But boy, the Warriors do not want to go into a hole. They're not used to playing down like that this frequently. So I want to see Jordan Poole step up. He hasn't, he had a great kind of small point, which I thought was kind of the cherry on top in game 2 in the third quarter. But the Warriors need a third scorer. Like if Clay and Steph are going to play great, someone else is going to also play, 22 points, have a big game like a Wiggins or Poole. And they haven't had that game where 3-4 guys had big numbers.
Yeah. The big 3 has been the formula for success lately.
Yeah, you kind of need the 3. So anyway, we're thrilled about obviously watching the Warriors, and it's a late night. They start at 9:00. So also wanted to tell you, and I didn't show a picture, but we had a great time. We went to the Coldplay concert.
Nice.
Here at the Meadowlands, and went with some dear friends. And man, that guy Chris Martin, he is something. Very special group. I know that's my wife's favorite band. We had a great time. But funny enough, that was, I don't know, Saturday night. Sunday night there was another show, and Bruce Springsteen showed up for a little special encore, and I was kind of like, man, all my friends are texting. I mean, I can't believe I missed Bruce in New Jersey, like that is just the Mecca to have Bruce at MetLife like that.
Have you seen Bruce?
I've seen Bruce a million times.
Me too.
Love Bruce. Shout out to my uncle Mitchell Slater, who introduced me to Bruce Springsteen. He's seen hundreds of shows and has his own podcast about Bruce, I'm sure. And I've learned a lot from him. So that was a great time. I did a charity golf outing, and I have another one coming up, and just a great time of year, real busy with work. Do you have any pictures from the hedges? I want to just always like to update.
Yes, I do.
Kind of the listeners and the audience on what we're working on. The Hedges is the family kind of generational project. It's 118 luxury apartment units here in Hawthorne, New Jersey. And it's a real aspirational brand. There you can see we've really made some progress with the siding. There's some white siding, some gray siding. Obviously, most of the brick is finished. And then one of the big step-ups this week, Doug, I don't know if you have that picture with all the pink insulation. I wanted to show that. This took a long time, lots of inspections, and finally we were able to get insulation. So that's kind of just the hallway shot. So that first floor now, all the apartments are insulated.
Nice.
Once that passes, then we go to sheetrock. And that's significant because getting the sheetrock up, if you've ever done renovations in your home or in a commercial property, that really now is defining the space. Yeah. If you're not in the business and you see the studs in the wall, sometimes it's hard to understand the space. The minute the sheetrock goes up, now we are really, we've defined, and people can kind of visualize themselves there. So very thankful for our partners at March Associates for keep pushing the needle. Also wanted to show you a quick photo. I don't know, did I show you a photo from some of the signage that Adam did for us? Yeah.
In Ridgewood?
Yeah, there you go. So, our guest last couple weeks ago, Adam Koppelman from Speed Pro Imaging, has just been a fantastic friend and a vendor of the family. He did some signage for us. This is in downtown Ridgewood. So he wrapped all the windows with Salons by JC coming soon signage, which is exciting for us. And he put that little a chip in there. I forget, NFC chip, I think it's called, where you can wave and go to our website. So that just got put up. And he also did some Ramsey Salons by JC logos and some glass. And he did it himself. It was good to see him out there. So, all right. Anything else from you with sneakers? Anything you want to talk?
Did have a big sneaker. I'll keep it super quick. I'll keep it super quick.
Okay.
There was a glitch in the Matrix. There was a glitch in
the red pill, the blue pill got a little mixed up there.
There was a glitch. So there was some type of problem with an app. I was getting sneakers off an app. There's some type of problem where you couldn't buy the sneaker, right?
Sure.
So I kept at it. And what I think happened is that the button wasn't working.
Okay.
So they launched at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
wasn't working for 45 minutes. I kept trying. I didn't give
Really?
up. So I'm figuring people tried,
Gave up.
gave up, and walked away. It started working. So normally I'm lucky if I get one pair. I got 7 pairs.
Oh my God, Dougie, this is amazing.
7 pairs. 7 pairs, and not that I'm going to wear all 7 pairs,
No,
but I could easily flip them and make $100 a pop on each one of them.
And which ones
easy.
were they again?
The Air Jordan ones.
Air Jordan ones. Right.
And they're like summer
the-
style. There's 2 different types.
Okay.
One's low, like tie dye, and one's like a summer like green.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're definitely a summer shoe.
So, but this is a great example of what we talk about with an entrepreneur. Having kind of a side hustle. You want to play in the sneaker game a little bit.
Yeah.
What did it cost you to do that? Nothing.
It was $100. It was $100 per pair.
No, but it was just your time in terms of being in front of the laptop.
And don't get me wrong, I'm addicted to sneakers, but it's not like I'm like putting a lot of time and effort toward it.
Right.
I mean, maybe you're seeing them pile up. Maybe I'll start a sneaker store.
but if you can make $100 a pair, right?
Yeah.
And that cost, I mean, what did it take you? An hour?
Oh yeah, an hour.
Right.
And I just made $1,000 in an hour.
Okay, so basically you bill at $1,000 an hour, right? So that's how I view everything. It's like, what's your time worth, right?
Absolutely.
Do you bill at $500 an hour? Do you bill at $1,000 an hour? Do you bill at $10,000 an hour?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to, when you're an entrepreneur, you've got to pick and choose where you spend your time. Because if you were only going to make $10 a sneaker, right? I'd say, Doug, why are you billing, at $100 an hour when your other job bills at $500 an hour, or whatever, right?
Very true.
So it's always important to understand, your value of what you bill at, and never discount that.
Absolutely.
Understand that. Did I send you a picture of a pair of sneakers I wanted to buy?
Yes.
Jordan, you have them or no?
Let me pull those up for you.
Real quick.
I was seeing if I could find the ones, but crazy find, crazy.
Somebody reached out to me on Instagram and said, I want a pair of sneakers, and this is what I thought I want.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's see. These are the reverse UNC.
Yeah.
Kind of the low dunks. Is that what they're called?
Yep. Those are the dunks.
Cool.
The reverse. So normally where it's white would be blue. That's why they call it reverse. Yeah.
All right. So basically, we will come back to this in a few weeks if these sneakers come in the mail. Right. Let's see what I won.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm not giving this guy my home address, but let's find out. Absolutely. Are you trying to find those other ones?
I think they're right here. If you want to see them.
All right.
If you want me to pull them up real quick. Yeah, if it's real quick.
Because we have our guest waiting in the green room. He's getting full on caviar and green M&Ms requested this morning.
All right, they're not there. Don't worry about it.
So
but we'll bring when 7 pairs show up. We'll bring them on.
I'd like to see the real thing
in real life.
Absolutely. So I'm ready to bring in our guest, Dougie. You want to check on the green room and see if Ruben is ready? I'd like to introduce you to a friend of the show, Ruben Greth from the Capital Raiser Show. Ruben, thanks for getting up with Garret extra early on the West Coast out there, and you're in Phoenix, Arizona. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Party at 7 a.m.
It's ready to go. I mean, this guy's already going to live 3 days today before we get started.
Hilarious.
We got him up and early. And Ruben, I just want to first start by saying, I really found out about the concept of capital raising and the concept of kind of learning a lot about podcasting from you. I think I Googled capital raising because that was kind of something that was transitioning for me in my business, going from more of a family office to capital raising, syndication, and bringing in other people's money. And I think I Googled capital raising and found your podcast. Awesome. And would listen, as I walked the dogs or had time in the car. And then I reached out and said, look, I'd like to get to know you a little bit and connect. And I've been a guest on your show and I appreciate you. And just want to first start off by saying thank you for all that you do for kind of the whole capital raising audience and people that are in multifamily. I mean, you've just been such a great inspiration and a leader. So we all collectively thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. So let's get started with a little bit of kind of the elevator pitch, kind of somewhat of the short story. Kind of how did you find your way into the capital raising business, and kind of how you kind of vision yourself as this expert and networker in capital raising and also in all different types of real estate syndication. Did you start as a real estate broker, or kind of how did you first get into the real estate industry? Because I know you didn't just wake up one day and get on a microphone. You obviously had to learn the business a little bit, right?
So I actually started as a mortgage guy for Wells Fargo way back in 2006 and quickly learned that wasn't really going to help me get into real estate, although it did teach me quite a bit about finance. And so from that job, I was looking for a way to get into real estate when I came across a sort of a university that taught a bunch of real estate strategies. And one of the classes they taught about was multifamily, large scale multifamily, although they didn't use the word syndication in there. It was more like
Sure.
taking down 40 or 50 unit type deals, typically with joint ventures. And so I started a meetup, and this one particular guy came into town. He had a bankruptcy. We're talking about 2009 here. So he was invested in a bunch of spec homes in San Diego, went bankrupt, and then came into Phoenix and then started buying a bunch of fourplexes. And with a background in mortgages, I was like, how are you buying these fourplexes? I know that you have a BK. And he said, well, I'm raising the capital for it. And I'm like, really? And he was taking down fourplexes at such frequency. I'm like, hey man, can I just tag along with you and follow you, take some videos of the projects you're doing, and then I can post them on YouTube and social media and see if we can potentially get some partners. He's like, yeah, sure. So we shot a bunch of videos, and within about 6 to 9 months, I raised like $600,000 for his fourplexes that he was buying.
Wow.
It was like a 3, a 4, a 12 plex even that we took down. And we were buying them at the heyday of the bottom of the market, where we were taking down.
What kind of prices here?
Yeah. So what kind of prices? $20,000 a unit for a
Oh, come on.
for a block built fourplex. Literally, I took down a
Wow.
like a house and a threeplex in the back that was brick built for like $72,000 back in those
Oh
days.
my God. So under 80 grand. Oh my God.
So he and I raised some capital, and then he was very into micromanaging his contractors, and I started investing a bunch of money in marketing, and he stopped showing up. Like, I had a producer fly into town. We were going to do like a little video series and shoot a pilot to see if we can get on A&E to talk about legacy fourplex acquisition and cash flow. That never really took off. But when I broke up with him, I didn't really have the confidence in myself yet. So I ended up back in corporate America, and I can't be behind a desk. So one day I quit my job, took off down to Mexico and camped on every beach. And in Acapulco, I actually met my future to-be wife, which was
Right.
fantastic. Eventually I made it back.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
Because
man.
you got married recently,
I
right?
know. 3 years ago, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, in my mind, I'm still stuck in 2019, Dougie. Right?
Yep, time
It's for
flies.
me, it's like March of 2019. So that's recent.
So when I got back to United States, I was like, I want to get back into real estate. And all I knew was fourplexes. So I devised this plan to buy a bunch of fourplexes, buy one, and then just double my portfolio 5 times until I ended up with 32 fourplexes for a total of 128 units. And I presented this plan to somebody at the local real estate association meeting. And they're like, well, why don't you just buy 128 units right now? And I'm like, what? I don't know how to do that. So they introduced me to this concept called syndication. And I was like, I need to find a guru or somebody to teach me this process, and started interviewing a bunch of coaches and a local mom and pop syndicator that was doing heavy lift. And I asked them, like, who do I need on my team for syndication? They're like, well, why do you care? I'm like, well, I used to raise capital for fourplexes back in the day. I'm good at social media and marketing. They're like, really? Well, we need somebody to raise capital for us. Why don't you just come join us instead of paying some guru a bunch of money? We've already done a bunch of syndications. We're working on our 15th and 16th. Yeah.
Let me pause for a second. Tell the audience, what is a real estate syndication?
Wait, so the audience doesn't know what a syndication is? Neither
No,
did I.
So the audience, yeah, this is perfect. My audience is up and coming entrepreneurs throughout all the different walks of life
Awesome.
that want to really walk away from corporate America like you did, from behind that desk.
Mhm.
And, it may be a group of side hustles that they start with. It may be real estate investing. So it's not just focused on real estate and syndication capital. So we talk, of course, a lot about real estate, but also about, sneaker collecting and Bitcoin and other fun things. So
I'm actually a sneaker collector too. So
We will get there.
I love Dunk Highs. I have some that are worth a lot of money, actually.
Nice. So tell, educate the audience, and I'll fill in where necessary. Talk about what your introduction to real estate syndication is, and kind of what that was.
So a syndication is just when a group gets together with a common goal. And what this typically means is when one person is really good at one specific business model, but may not have enough money, what they'll do is, for example, in multifamily, they'll own, operate, and acquire properties, typically large scale multifamily or properties that have a big upside at the back end if you're doing a lot of construction or rehabilitation or whatever you want to call it. And you can syndicate a lot of stuff, like anything from baseball teams to hotels, casinos, oil and gas. But in my industry, what we syndicate is multifamily. So we go, typically people in my industry, they go and acquire property. And then when it's time to get across the finish line, they raise a bunch of money from what we refer to as limited partners. There's a bunch of different ways to raise capital, and we'll get into that. But primarily speaking, across the country, a lot of people partner with $50,000 investors that become completely passive in your deal and then expect you to be a good steward of their money and then own and operate the property so that they can be working their W-2 or, you know, whatever it is that they're doing without having to lift hammers and put in baseboards and property manage and be a landlord and any of that stuff. And so I used to think that like only super mega rich people bought multifamily properties, like 100-unit properties and up. But what I ended up finding out was that these guys that are purchasing these 100-unit properties that are worth $10 to $25 million, they are essentially just dudes that you went to high school with. They're no different than anybody else. They're not mega wealthy. They're just really good at operating properties. And then they partner with a bunch of limited partners or equity investor partners that bring in anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000. And then these guys team up together and purchase large commercial real estate assets. We had mentioned multifamily is a big one, but people do hotels, they do office buildings, triple net lease,
shopping centers,
industrial shopping centers. They can syndicate a bunch of stuff. Like one of the things that we're syndicating right now is this development of build to rent communities, like 100-unit subdivisions.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about build to rent later as well. So it's so interesting. This is really a big secret, Dougie. I shouldn't say a big secret, but to Ruben's point, a lot of people I think understand when they're starting out. There's a lot of people that want to get into real estate investing.
They think Mr. Monopoly with his little hat and glasses thing owns the whole establishment.
Right. In their mind, they're thinking of this tremendous multi-centimillionaire, billionaire buying real estate. But the reality is, and I'll be honest with you, our family really learned this very, very late. Mm-hmm. Most of the big groups have done this not using a lot of their own money. Think about that for a minute. A lot of times, your certain amount of risk you want to take, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of big companies over the years and big families only put a little bit of their money at risk in there. Mm-hmm. You go out and you think that someone's buying a $20 million property. You say, okay, well, you know, maybe they got a $15 million mortgage, so they invested $5 million. The reality is, and Ruben can talk more about, you know, certain percentages that each group puts in, but a lot of these groups may only put in 5%, 10%. So although the equity piece may be $5 million, that syndicator or whoever's running the deal, the sponsor, there's a number of different, you know, legal terms, may have only put in $500,000, and that may be a big number, Ruben, right, on some deals. And this is something that I think is grossly misunderstood, and I think one of the biggest kind of national misunderstatements here, and we're not going to get into politics, but I think with former President Trump, he was very well known for owning a ton of real estate in New York City. But the reality is that a lot of the real estate you saw his name on, they were not owned. They were deals that either he had a little bit of money in, or they licensed his brand and his name. So you may have heard, oh, there's a $100 million office building. That doesn't mean he put in $100 million or has $100 million. It may mean he has $1 million, you know? And I think those are kind of gross misunderstandings that the country doesn't really understand. Now, on the flip side, it's a great opportunity. You don't need $10 million, right, Ruben, to go buy a shopping center, to buy a multifamily. By the way, when Ruben uses the term multifamily, he's referring to an apartment complex, typically bigger than, 4 units, 10 units, because he'll say fourplex or triplex for 3 or something, or duplex for 2. But multifamily would generally be kind of an investable asset that would be a collection of apartments where multi-families, many families are living, versus single family, which is the house you grew up in, right? Yeah. One family, just in case anybody is confused about that. So, there's lots of ways that people can invest in real estate deals at small amounts, 25,000, 50,000. Every company is different. I mean, most investors that start with our family kind of start around 100,000 in that range.
Mhm.
But there's crowdfunding websites where I think they probably invest $5,000 or $10,000. So you have a question, Doug?
Yeah, I think this is something that the common question would be for people watching now would be, because we've talked about some of the deals and some of the investments you've made, like in North Carolina. So are these the same returns, this syndication that we're talking about? Are these the same returns that you would see just like those other deals where like they're looking to, within 5 years, maybe sell the unit, or they're getting a portion of
Yep.
the rentals, stuff like that? Are these the same
Absolutely.
payouts? Like, is the same?
Yeah, I mean, Ruben, I don't know how you typically have structured the deals that you're involved in, but most of kind of the deals that I do, our investors get like an 8%, what's called a preferred return.
Mhm.
So, and we do these syndications, right? Where you put in 100,000 and you put in 200,000 and your mom puts in $1 million. Everyone's throwing a different amount of money in, and you're getting this, often called preferred return, which means that your dollars are preferred
Mhm.
to my dollars, right? So you get your 8%, and then after that, there's a split, right? So the better it does, the better I do.
Mhm.
Ruben, is that your experience? Have most of your syndications had kind of a preferred return and then some type of equity waterfall?
Yeah. So what preferred typically means for us is that the people that invest the money with you get their money back before you as the operator do. That's really what preferred
Right.
return is. And then if you hit that number, let's say in your case 8%, or in our case something similar, if you hit that number, once you get there and there's more than 8%, then the operator participates. And if that number gets really high, let's say that you're getting 15% return on cash flow or whatnot, if you hit a certain hurdle, most people will put a hurdle in there so that once you're getting 15% return, now the split changes. Now, instead of 70% going to the limited partner and 30% to the operator, it may go 50-50. And you may even have another hurdle, like if you hit really high numbers, like 22% return, then the operator may get 70% of the return. And then from there forward, the limited partners get 30 because they're just getting ridiculous amounts. So they
And Ruben,
incentivize.
yeah, why is this fair? Explain to the audience why this structure makes sense, why it's fair to both sides.
Well, an operator needs money to survive. And if you're an investor that's putting in money with some owner operator and they can't even pay the lights for their employees, they're going to struggle. So when you structure a syndication or a big multifamily deal in such a way where the limited partner gets a fair share in the beginning and then a good share in the middle, and then if it's really, really good, you're essentially incentivizing the operator to do phenomenally well, because the better they do, the better you do. And if they can get to that major hurdle where everybody's making a ton of money, then it makes sense, right? Because if there's no incentive for them to do great work, they'll just do the minimum required. But they're going
Right.
to set themselves up in a situation where if they perform really well, increase the rents, increase the net operating income, lower expenses, increase the value of the property by raising rents and providing an amazing environment for their residents, then it makes sense for everybody at that point. And
I agree.
typically,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, typically a lot of people are structuring their deals right now in 5 years. They sell the property, and then the operator makes money when they purchase. And then if they refinance or have some kind of event like that where they're changing the finance, they may get another kickback. And then at the end, when they sell, that's when the operator makes the most money, and when you can return all of the money to all of the back end money, I should say, to your investors. And hopefully you perform well enough so that they come back and do it all over again.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never had investors who did well and made a lot of money come back and say, you made too much money, Garrett, because at that juncture, it's outperformed what we all thought it would be, Doug.
Mhm.
So the upside for the syndicator or the sponsor, whatever term you want to make, is really very kind of back ended, right? It's kind of like Tom Cruise saying, you know what, just pay me $1 million to be in Top Gun 2, and I'll take my 100 million later after all the box office receipts are counted,
Mhm.
right? He's confident. He's like, I know this thing's going to kill. it's been 30 years. I've been harvesting it, I've been kindling it, and I've been keeping an eye on the brand, and it's going to just absolutely kill. And it did.
It did. It was awesome.
And I can't wait to see it. And this guy's going to walk away with ridiculous money.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and there's lots of financial planners that have different types of kind of money management strategies. Some of them charge a couple percentage points for money under management, and some people charge, based on performance. But this is the very common situation here, how kind of the limited partner kind of gets this, and pick a number, 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%. Every deal is different. And numbers that I quote are not exactly what, it's going to be. Every single deal is going to be represented in an offering memorandum and a subscription agreement. So you have to read all that. And just to be also, Ruben, this is probably a good time for both of us to say at this time, we're not pitching any securities. We're not selling anything. We're just talking about kind of how these systems work, how these strategies work. So, obviously I work with accredited investors.
Mhm.
And I know that it's important to get that out there, that if you're interested in learning more, certainly we can have conversations and talking about what this all is, but there's not a specific security we're selling right now. So let's back up, Ruben. You met this marketing guy, this guy, and you said, hey, I'm kind of a marketing guru. I'm on YouTube. I'm trying some things, which, by the way, I think was pretty forward of you, because some people could say, put your camera away, man. Don't come into this house. Like, I don't want to let the neighbor know that I'm doing this, or I don't want my friend to know that I'm making money, or I don't want the lender to know I
Some
made
people are
money.
private.
Yeah, like there's a lot of privacy in kind of the old school mentality in real estate, and good for you for trying to break that. I deal with that as well. So take us back to that point where you kind of partnered up there.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to mention about Top Gun.
Yeah.
It's very likely that movie was syndicated, just like most movies. So that's another thing that you can syndicate. And I bet you there's going to be a lot of people that are very happy with their returns from investing into that movie.
That would have been a good one to invest in. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when I got back from Mexico, I was looking to get into real estate and partnered with a local syndicator. They were doing heavy lift multifamily properties in Tucson, Arizona. So I helped them do a couple of deals. When they brought me on to raise capital for them, I had read a book by a gentleman named Joe Fairless called The Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book. And I went right to the chapter on raising capital in there. And it said, start an interview-based thought leadership platform, which I had unknowingly did previously with my
That's great.
YouTube channel, right? That was my
Wow.
platform for getting in front of people. And that's a big part of capital raising, is getting in front of, using some kind of platform or book or social media content or blog or whatever to get in front of as many people as possible. And in the process of starting this show, I was interviewing like the top syndicators across the country, the top capital raisers. And I had this light bulb go off, and I was like, geez, I wonder if instead of me just working in Arizona, maybe I can partner with other syndicators across the country and have access to all these institutional grade deals that they're talking about on my show. And then maybe I can take these other capital raisers who I've had on my show, but I got to figure out how to legally put them together, because there's all these laws and securities and regulations that say you're allowed to do certain things and you're not allowed to do things. And sometimes you're treated like a security. If you're a syndicator and you got passive investors, you're certainly treated like a security. And then, I was learning about all these things, and I kept on interviewing lawyers, the syndication attorneys, and they're like, hey, man, if you want to put these capital raisers and these syndicators together across the country, what you need to do is start your own fund. So then I got all crazy about funds. I'm like, I need to interview fund managers and guys that help put funds together. And eventually I figured it out and was like, I'm going to go launch my own fund. But I was nervous and scared as hell, because like, to become a person that's not leaning on someone else's track record, but creating your own, is a very scary thing. And, one of the things that you're going to deal with if you're starting your own fund for the first time is your investors are going to be asking, well, how many of these funds have you done before? And if the answer is zero, you're going to get a lot of resistance. So what I ended up doing was actually partnering with an existing fund manager. He's like, hey, don't go launch your own fund. Come work with me. You can help me capitalize, bring systems, automations, marketing, branding, and the exposure that you have from your show. And we can team up together. You can leverage my track record. I can leverage your exposure, and then we can work together and make a big difference in the different communities that we're going to be investing with. And I was like, sign me up. So I got all excited, and now I'm partnering with somebody who's been in the business for 20 years, and we're doing some really good stuff. We're building subdivisions and doing some great things.
That's great, man. Good for you.
Yeah. So I'm pretty
For you,
excited
yeah.
about it.
You're
That's
thrilled
that's
about
where
it.
that's where I am
That's who you are.
today.
That's who you are. And you know, one of the things I want to point out that I think I'm really impressed by you, Ruben, is that you have this very kind of laid back approach when you say, well, maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that. It's like you keep your options open, right? You're not so black and white thinking. It sounds like you realize life happens, and I say this a lot in gray areas. Sometimes people get down on themselves, you know, and it's like I get to this door and it's the door's shut and I just can't get it open. And, you know, that just puts them away for 2-3 years, and depression and sadness and whatever. And you just kind of have this approach in how you handle things. You're like, well, all right, you know what? Maybe I'm going to learn more about funds. And, you know, maybe I'm going to learn more about going on YouTube. And maybe that's the way to do it. Like, you're just open to continuing to educate yourself and open to learning. And I think those are important skills. Entrepreneurs kind of have to have this giggle and this kind of laughter about themselves, and be able to look in the mirror, you know, and kind of take a joke a little bit, and be able to say, you know what, all right, that didn't work, so maybe I'll try something else, and you know, maybe I will go to that real estate networking show. So I admire you for that a lot. I really appreciate you putting yourself out there. I think it takes a lot of gusto to kind of start a YouTube channel and to go and do that, and not have 50 years experience, let's say, and you know, a lot of people kind of, I hate to use the term, what do I say? Fake it till you make it. I don't believe in that, but more the idea of like, it's okay to learn as you're doing. There's nothing wrong with that. You never stop learning.
It's more like you're supposed to have confidence in yourself, not like fake it till you make it. But that's what people think, they got to fake it, but no, be confident in yourself and do it.
Yeah, like he knew enough. I always talk about like go to A to B and B to C and C to D. Like he knew how to get himself on YouTube from A to B, or he knew how to you know, start networking and talk to the right people. You don't have to know every step. You just got to know the next step, and you got to take it, right? You got to go for it. So let's talk, Ruben, about this concept, because this is something that we have not really talked about at all, Dougie, on the show, and I think it'll be interesting for the audience. And I'm interested in learning more from you, Ruben. The concept of building homes to rent. Is that the right term, or build to rent, or single family build to rent? So can we talk about, Ruben, what that is, and why you decided to get into that?
Yeah. So I stumbled into it, right?
See, there you go.
And
you never know.
And basically the fund manager that I'm working with now, Andy at Legacy Acquisitions, he was introducing me to this concept of building houses and subdivisions. And I was like, well, I don't think my audience knows anything about that. They're all multifamily guys. And I just started looking at it. And the more that I saw it, I realized that it was more lucrative than the value add multifamily deals that we were coming across. And then instead of raising capital for other operators and making, you know, what I would consider a lot less than you would if you were the actual owner operator of your own deals, I just started thinking, dang, this is really lucrative. Like, it's lucrative for the capital raiser. It's lucrative for the limited partner. Maybe I should look into this a little bit more. And then, so one of the processes that you have to go through when you're raising money is you have to start educating and nurturing people. So we just started talking about build to rent all over the place, you know, and before you knew it, people were coming out of the woodwork. Oh, you know, I heard that is a really good option for making money in this industry. And you know what, as an operator, it's really hard to find a deal and compete with 40 or 50 other buyers that are doing multifamily. You're saying that I can have access to your deal and help you raise capital for build to rent, and we can build these subdivisions and, you know, 10 houses every month. We'll just keep on doing that. So one thing to think about is, where are you doing build to rent? Where are you building these subdivisions? We're building right now in Louisiana and Alabama. Land is extremely cheap down there. The people, I should say, the city engineers will help you get properties entitled very quickly, because there's a massive shortage of housing, not just there, but all over the country.
Yeah, huge need.
And then, you know, from the time that you're raising money to the time that the property is built, you want that to be as fast as possible. So we like that we can build fast in these markets. Whereas if you were to try and do build to rent subdivisions in Phoenix, where a lot of institutions go and do these build to rents, you have to go through a lot more red tape in a big city. You have to pay a lot more for the land. and you have to sit on capital during these long, intensive entitlement phases without making any money because you're invested in dirt that doesn't cash flow. So if you can find a deal, here's the way that we kind of set it up. We'll go and find a piece of land. We'll put it under contract with an option to buy, and then we'll go and entitle it. And then when it's completely entitled and city's approved our engineering and everything else, that's when we complete the purchase and start the capital raise. So our investors are in right when we can stick a shovel in the ground, and they get their money back as soon as we can sell off the entire subdivision. Here's another concept. We're selling these entire subdivisions off to one single buyer instead of a bunch of retail individual houses. Right.
And are they when are you selling them? Is it at CO or is it rented for a year with proven cash flow?
So as we're building these houses, we're building 10 at a time. As soon as 10 are done, we're renting them out. And then as soon as we build out the next 10. So by the time the entire thing is completely built out, it's already 80 or 90% rented out. So with those lease agreements, we can show that, or we can use that as proof for any individual institutional buyer or mega
proof of concept,
proof of concept. And then they can basically underwrite the entire thing as a commercial asset, which is underwritten based off of the net operating income of the entire property. This is the way they evaluate and appraise multifamily properties.
Commercial real estate. Yeah.
It's commercial real estate, right? So it's based off of, it's a business that you're buying. So you base the worth of it, the value of it off of how much cash flow or how much net operating income it's generating. So we can sell them.
Real interesting.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in. Doug, one of the big differences in residential real estate versus commercial is you own a home and, your home's worth X amount of dollars, right? And it's got 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and a kitchen. And your neighbor sells their house for, X plus $10,000. And it's the kind of the same layout, right? So you go in and you put in really pretty tile in your house and you paint the walls and you guys are happy. But for the next buyer, nothing's really different, right? The house is still kind of worth what the comp says, meaning what the neighborhood says. In commercial real estate, it's valued based on the P&L, so the net operating income that the asset produces, the cash flow stream, okay? So an investor says, all right, I'm willing to pay 10 times that cash flow. I'm willing to pay 20 times that cash flow, right? Or I'm willing to pay 5 times that cash flow. And you can alter that, right? Because when you raise the rents, the cash flow is going to go up. If you make improvements to the house, like you put in a pool or better laundry or a nicer kitchen or a fancy walk-in closet, from California Closets, someone's going to rent that place for more money, therefore higher cash flow, therefore higher valuation. So that's a real big difference maker in commercial versus residential. You have much more of an impact on creating value than you do in residential. And so here, Ruben, tell me about the houses. How are they different, if any, from the amenities that would come in kind of what Doug or I would buy in a regular single-family home or in a multifamily complex? I mean, are there shared playgrounds, pools as an amenity? And are the kitchens as nice as a custom kitchen you would have in a home? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Well, they're pretty nice little houses. They're 1,200 units. The ones that we're building in this subdivision that I'm thinking of right now,
they have square feet.
They have cement floors that are polished. They're really beautiful. They come with a backyard. They come with a doggy door in many cases and a driveway, which separates this from what you would compare a multifamily unit to. Because a lot of multifamily properties, they're they're apartments built on top of apartments, built on top of apartments. And when you're syndicating multifamily versus what we call horizontal multifamily, we're essentially doing the exact same business model, but the residents stay longer and treat it like it's their own home because they have privacy, they have backyard, they have a fence, they have a driveway.
It's more pride of ownership, right?
Right. So
it's 1,200 square feet and it's, basic kitchen.
So one of the things that we're doing is we're building these in the Southeast. And, if you've ever heard of Hurricane Katrina, these are the types of things that people start worrying about when they're thinking, I don't know if I should invest in a deal in the Southeast. So we build these with concrete walls, I should say, with cement board walls on the exteriors, which are very durable. They can last, they can deal with, crazy weather. And then for the most part, we're far enough away from the ocean where
Right,
you
you're
may,
inland.
the worst thing that you might get is a couple of shingles removed or maybe a fence knocked over. Everything else pretty much is intact. The only major concern, I think, for the resident is if the power goes off from a hurricane or something like that, when am I going to get my power back on? Because I got
Sure.
fish that need air, and my refrigerators is full with food. But other than that, I mean, these communities are great. They come with, depending on the budget or what our end idea is, they come with, dog parks, playgrounds, walking trails. On this new one that we're going to be doing in a 506c. So typically you can't talk about your projects. Here's another thing to consider is we're regulated as a security. So we can't talk about projects unless we file for specific exemptions that allow us to advertise. And in this new deal that we're doing, we're going to be putting a community center, walking trails, dog park, and then, it's going to be a beautiful setup. But this is kind of what we can do there. I mean, multifamily, you can do the same thing, right? You can put a dog park, you can put it in a playground, but in these horizontal detached houses, you can also do the same thing when you're building it. You just plan ahead and then get the city to approve your plans and
So how do the
try and make
rents how do the rents differ here? So if you have a 1,200 square foot horizontal multifamily, I like that term. So you have a 1,200 square foot home that you're going to rent. You've built it to rent, and that's probably going to be a 2-bedroom plus a little den or something maybe. How does that compare to a 2-bedroom brand new apartment in that same town that you're in? Let's say the amenities are the same. There's a shared pool, there's a shared playground, there's a shared doggy park. What's the difference in the rent there?
Typically the rent's maybe a few $100s more. So instead of paying $1,000 in Louisiana for a apartment unit, you might be able to get a house for like $1,400. Actually,
So
we calculated our rents to be about $1,450, and we've built about 8 of them already, and
Okay.
we're seeing that we're getting closer to $1,650, and rents all over the
That's
country
great.
keep on
You're getting
going up.
better than your, but
And
it's a
Mhm.
big percentage. I mean, look, 13. If you said to me, I can have an apartment for $1,000, Doug, or I could have a house for 1,300. Yeah, 300 sounds like a much better deal to get the whole privacy of the house, right?
Mhm.
But that is 30%. I mean, on a
Yeah.
$1,000 is not a lot of money to rent the house, in my
Get
opinion.
some blinds.
But it's a big, if you're talking about $2,000, prices in markets, or $3,000, 30% would be tremendous difference.
Yeah.
But compare that to what it would cost if you had a mortgage on a house,
Well, that's what you
right?
compare it to, right? Taxes, mortgage, you're not paying all that stuff.
So
Um,
instead of a $2,400 bill, maybe you're paying $1,500,
okay.
and
And who
you're
handles?
renting. And
Well,
millennials, yeah, and a bunch of other
yeah,
people, they prefer renting than they do
absolutely. And
owning, which is
what about
crazy.
like snowplow removal, landscaping? What, the things that you want to get away from as a homeowner to go to an apartment if you're downsizing
Mhm.
or you're starting your life, now do these people have to take on those obligations of snow and landscape and gutters and all those kind of annoying things, or who handles that stuff?
So the same way that a multifamily property, let's say a 100-unit apartment complex, is property managed by one particular person, they manage the entire subdivision. And then there's like one leasing office and one company that maintains all the grass in the common areas. So no, they don't have to do that. I
Oh,
mean,
great.
right. So it's managed exactly like a multifamily property would be.
How interesting. Dougie, what do you want to
So
add to that?
yeah, so
Have you
I've
ever heard of
heard the
this? This
quote.
is new. Kind
Yeah,
of a new thing.
there's a new concept, and there's a quote I've heard, and I want to see if it's just a true quote. I've heard people say you should rent where you live and own assets, but rent where you live. Is this a true strategy? Should you be trying to rent places where you're going to be living and try to own assets that you can rent out to other people? Is that like the strategy? where you'd want to, or I don't know, take it away.
Well, I mean, I think it's different for every situation you're in, Doug. I mean, if the town that you live in, that your kids play sports in, that you love to be part of that community, if you live in that town and the appreciation on homes in that town is 2% a year, right? And you have $1 million house, yeah, you probably should rent that and take that $1 million and put it in something that makes 10 or 15% a year. I mean, I understand that. I mean, for me, it's all about the numbers. It's if you can invest, with Ruben or with our family or other families, and you're making 15, 20% a year, and your house is only making 1, 2, 3% a year, I could see that story. What do you?
I'm saying like where you live, where your home is, you should be renting, not buying a home. Like everyone's goal is to buy a home, right? And I think that's like their greatest asset. But the quote, I think, is referring to renting where you sleep at night, your home, like where you rest your head, renting where you live, and you should be looking to purchase assets and owning, not buying a home being the goal, buying assets that you could rent out to other people being the goal.
Sure. Assets that make, I mean, look, Ruben and I buy assets that make cash flow. Yeah. Right. So not only are you getting the appreciation, you're getting the cash flow, you're getting the operating business. That doesn't typically happen in your house. So basically what you're alluding to is, why would you put, $1 million into something that doesn't make you cash flow when you can put $1 million into something that does make you cash flow, like an office building, a shopping center, a hotel, a multifamily syndication, whatever it may be. Now, the only flip side, I have some friends that would sit in this chair and say to you, that's where my kids live, and I don't want to be under any type of pressure where a landlord can control me and, I get evicted in 3 years or he decides to triple the rent in 3 years and I'm SOL. My kids don't want to have to switch schools. It's too emotional. It's too traumatic. So I've heard that argument as well. And I think everyone's different. But, when I first heard about this concept, probably around the 2008 recession, there were a bunch of big groups like Colony Capital. They were coming in and buying kind of these tremendous subdivisions in areas that were a lot of spec housing was built and it didn't go anywhere because of the recession, right? So they were trying to pick these things up at pennies on the dollar. And they said, you know what, we'll rent them out. And then when things get better, we'll kind of sell them. But this is very new, and I'm glad that Ruben, was our guest today and could kind of share this, because this is we're still very much in the first kind of second inning here, where now you've got developers actually building these tremendous subdivisions for rent. It's not to sell it later. It's not to rent it now and, that's our backup plan. We'll rent it and we'll sell it in 2 years. It's literally, we have a housing crisis. Like in Greensboro, where we do a lot of work, we know we're 10,000 units short. And so we're looking at our shopping centers and saying, Ruben, can we knock down half a shopping center and put up 200-300 apartments? Those are real conversations we're having. And the city's much more interested than in northern New Jersey, where it's impossible to get stuff done. So I was a little nervous when I first heard about this concept, because I kept focusing on the long-term capital costs, right? Like, when you have an apartment complex that's multi-story, you have one roof that could cover 50 units, right? Here, you could have 50 little individual roofs. And as you get into kind of smaller roofs, it's a lot of labor. Things cost more money when it's in small projects and smaller jobs. You could have air conditioning units where, let's say you need a new air conditioning unit in the house, Ruben, that could wipe out a significant amount of the cash flow for the entire year if the rents are not, real high. So I was kind of nervous about capital expenses, but I guess, how would you respond to that?
These houses are brand new. They're not going to have maintenance.
You're buying brand new. Now they're brand new. So you're going to have 25 years on your roof. Yeah. You're not buying it 20 years in and saying, all right, I only have 5 years left. That's the flip side. Absolutely. That's the objection.
People during this time, I'd say 2008, 2009, there were a lot of guys like Warren Buffett that wanted to buy like 1,000 houses. And there was these things called bulk REO packages, because everybody went into foreclosure or short sales. That's right. And these banks had these, huge, massive portfolios of houses that they would sell to individual buyers. But these houses would be scattered all over the place in multiple counties, in multiple states, even.
No systems.
And that becomes extremely challenging to property manage. So these guys that still want to own houses, they see this subdivision and they're like, I can have all of my houses, these institutions, these massive people that buy, I can have them all in one place and have one property manager. that's just amazing. Let's do it. So there's all this money out there streaming into build to rent right now from institutions. They want to buy more build to rent subdivisions than what's available. I think there's
Incredible.
like 2% of the amount of money that people want to invest as institutions into build to rent is being supplied by small developers like myself that are building these 100-unit or I
Now,
should say apartments. and
Ruben,
whatnot.
I mean, do you feel that there's been a seismic shift in kind of the generational's acceptance of renting versus owning? Renting when I was growing up was very much looked at as you rent kind of in the beginning of life before you saved up enough money to buy that house with the white picket fence, and then maybe at the end of life, if it's just you. But now it seems that renting has become much more accepted by the younger generation. They like to travel. They like to focus on experiences and time with their friends versus fancy, expensive assets that don't make money, and that this is the future. That's why you're part of the reason why you're seeing this push that renting is going to become much more accepted for people in all stages of life. What's your thoughts on that?
It's kind of sad, honestly, because I think people. I mean, back to Doug's question is does it make sense to rent it, instead of purchase? And Robert Kiyosaki likes to talk about this concept that if you are borrowing to purchase something and it's not paying you cash flow, that is a liability. Anything that takes money out of your pocket is a liability. So from that perspective, it makes sense to purchase assets instead of your own home. But from my perspective, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make if you want to create generational wealth for your family is not purchasing a home, because these homes are going to go up in value. It's been, if you look back since 1900, the values of homes have gone up faster than just about any other kind of investment that you can make. So one of the biggest things that people that have gone through 4, 5, 6 cycles of real estate, and they're looking back on life and saying, I wish I could have purchased more and sold less. I know a guy that his name's Sam Freshman. He bought a high-rise building in the 60s in Los Angeles for $1 million and then sold it a few years later for $2 million. That same building is now worth $100 million. So from my perspective, if you really want to create wealth that you can leave to your children, it makes sense to buy real estate, pay it off, even though it may be a liability because you're not making money off of it. But the fact that there's this thing called appreciation, that over time, it makes a lot of financial sense to invest in a home and then pay it off as much as you can so that you can leave it to your children, because it's going to be worth a lot more money. And most people today, if they can't afford a home, or if they like this convenience of being able to be mobile and move from city to city, then they're not buying. And that, I think, is going to be a major problem for them when it comes time to retirement. They're not going to have hard assets like a home that they could sell.
Got it. Cool. So we're going to wrap up. Tell us a little bit about your sneaker game before we wrap up. I know you're an avid traveler and a big snowboarder and a dog lover, but I didn't know you were a sneaker guy. So tell me about that.
So I got into these particular models of Nikes called Dunk Highs. And because I'm a skateboarder, they actually have a division of Nike that's for skateboarding. It's called Nike SB. And they make a version of these Dunk Highs that are just amazing. And they basically sell out. Typically they make maybe about 10,000 pairs. So if you can buy a few and then hold on to them, they're no longer available anymore because they've only made a certain amount. And then a few years later, they're worth 2 or 3 times what you paid for them. So
Nice.
I have a couple of pairs that were like, there's like a De La Soul version of, this particular colorway of shoe. And then another one called the Melvins model. So there was this rock band called the Melvins, and they got their own sponsored shoe from Nike SB. And these ones, I think they were selling from day one for like $300. And I have a pair, and now they're worth like, if they're the original, they're like $1,000. So
wow, I'll give you 800 for them, Ruben. 800.
you could flip it for a $200 gain.
That's what I was saying before. Like,
That's
now
right.
times that by 7 with this glitch. I just
7.
got 7 of them.
Lucky number 7. So when Ruben has his fabulous podcast, which is the Capital Raiser Show, and I've been a guest on it, and we have a great dear friend in common, Jerome Myers. Shout out to him.
Mhm.
I know he's a sponsor of your show, and he's just been a great friend of both of ours. You do a lightning round at the end. We also do a lightning round. You're not the only
Fantastic.
one, Ruben, that does a lightning round. Okay, you didn't invent it, but
Oh, hey now.
hold on.
I was getting the
was
lightning round ready.
But I've got to put Ruben through a lightning round because he did it to
Sweet.
me and he does it to everyone.
Mhm.
I'm going to alter some of the questions to make them a little more towards things that I know about Ruben. But are you ready with the music?
Yeah, we're ready. Let's
Exciting.
rock.
Okay. And you cannot answer with the best ever apartment book by Joe. What's his name? Joe Faralis. What's another business book that you recommend to up and coming entrepreneurs?
A business book. So I would say do some personal development reading. I have a book called The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And if you can get your mind and your spirit right, it's going to help you in your business. So it's not specifically a business book, but I highly recommend The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer so that you can attract peace and attract wealth into your life.
Okay, cool. So I love to travel. I know you do as well, but I've never been to outer space, and it's somewhere I'd like to go one day. Who would you trust to take you and I? Would it be Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk?
I would say Elon Musk.
Elon. Okay, cool. First concert, best concert.
First concert was David Lee Roth back in
Wow.
1986. I think he had Cinderella with him back in those days. So that was a lot of fun. The best concert I've ever been to was probably in high school. I went to this concert with the Beastie Boys and
Wow.
Cypress Hill. It was so
Yep.
off the hook. I loved it.
Awesome. I know you're a huge traveler and you love to do handstands when you go traveling. What's your favorite place that you did a handstand at?
Probably the Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty was your best one?
That was,
All right, we'll find that.
yeah, I like that one.
We'll put that one in the comments later.
Oh, you know what? I did one
yeah.
in Palenque, which is an archaeological ruins down in Mexico. That one was really cool. I think
was a good
one's
one too.
probably my
Good
favorite.
form?
Yeah. Great form.
So,
yeah, always.
on my Instagram, I always post different vanity plates that I like to see around the country. If you had to have a vanity plate on your car, or a new Instagram handle, what would be a funny one you'd throw on there?
A funny one. I'm not really a funny guy. Maybe.
or one that would describe you on your car if you had to have a license plate in your car.
So I have a personalized license plate. It just says my name
Oh.
and my university. It's actually, I have the original one on the wall
Says
behind
Ruben
me.
ASU?
Yeah, ASU
Or-
Greth.
ASU Greth. All right, that's a perfect answer. You actually have one.
Mhm.
And last question, Ruben, what's a goal that you want me to remind you of a year from now?
To build 1,000 houses would be fantastic.
1,000
I
houses.
should be about 60 to 70% of the way there if everything pans out.
That's amazing, man. Awesome. Well, Ruben Greth, I am so appreciative. You survived the Get Up with Garret lightning round and the show. You woke up super early to be with us today, which is part of kind of my mantra and what I always recommend. Get up early, start your day, be thankful, be grateful, organize your day, your week, and what you want to focus on. And, you've certainly done it. And I know the audience is appreciative. We've learned a lot today.
Oh yeah, very very nice, very nice episode.
If
Definitely be
anybody's
picking your
interested
brain.
in learning more about capital raising, I recommend
Absolutely.
a book by Richard C. Wilson called Raising Capital. And it's
Oh my
fantastic for
goodness,
syndicators.
we never even got to that. I know you just spent some time with Richard in the Family Office Club, right?
Yeah, he
saw
just partnered with me and purchased 50% of the Capital Raiser show. So now
Oh
I
my
work
goodness.
with him, and that's very exciting.
Well, this will have to be on the next episode because I've been to some of Richard's events, so I want to hear more about it. But we're running out of time. Ruben, if somebody wants to connect with you, LinkedIn, Instagram, throw you a couple questions. Are you open to taking some emails or questions from my audience to learn a little bit more about what you do?
That's how I run my business. I'm always talking
That's
to
it.
people,
So
whether
what's the
I
best
do
way to
business
connect?
with them. Yeah, they find me on LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
How
Those are
about
probably
Can you give us your Instagram?
or just
Yeah,
or
it's
go-
Capital Raiser.
It's
right?
at Capital Raiser. Yeah, that's how you find. That's
Yeah,
my
dude.
handle.
How'd you get that great?
Nobody
you
else
get that
had it.
great,
Nobody wanted it.
Wow. Cool. Well, guess what? My
There
Instagram
you
account
go.
was just locked, so I got to go figure out what the heck just happened with that. But anyway, I appreciate you being with me. And if anyone in the audience wants to reach out to Ruben, that's the IG handle. Go ahead, shoot him a DM and connect with him. He's a great follow. He's got some great videos of his previous episodes, and maybe you'll see a friendly face that you recognize from a few years ago. And want to thank everyone for spending their morning with Doug and I and with Ruben. And just remember, the more you give, the more you get. Dougie, play us out, baby. All right.